Hi, everyone. My name is Emma. I'm 29 years old, and my husband is Liam, 34. We've been married for 3 years. But we've been together a little longer than that. Honestly, I don't even know where to start. Because this story doesn't have a happy ending. If I could go back in time and slap some sense into myself, I wouldn't even think twice. But here I am, stuck with the choices I made and the consequences they brought. Before I get into it, I want to make one thing clear. I loved Liam. Or at least, I thought I did. He is, without a doubt, one of the most dependable, kind-hearted men I've ever met. He runs a small business. And while he's not flashy or loud, he's the kind of man who remembers your favorite coffee order without asking. He's the kind of guy who stays up late helping you with the little things you didn't even realize you needed help with. But I'm not here to brag about him. Because I managed to ruin everything we had, all of it. I'm the reason it all fell apart. And the guilt eats at me every single day. Liam and I met 4 years ago at this small coffee shop downtown. He was working as the manager there. And I still remember the first time I saw him. He was standing behind the counter, wearing a simple button-up shirt and giving this tired but genuine smile to every customer. I wouldn't say it was love at first sight. Not even close. He wasn't my type back then. He was kind of quiet, unassuming, and a little ordinary. I usually went for guys who were more charismatic. Guys who turned heads when they walked into a room. Liam wasn't that, but there was something about him that felt safe. I didn't think much about him at first. I'd come in during my lunch break, grab a coffee, and leave without giving him a second thought. But one day, I forgot to grab napkins. And Liam cracked this small joke about how I must be saving trees or something. It wasn't hilarious, but it made me laugh. And maybe that's where it all started. At the time, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I had just gotten out of a messy breakup with a guy who, looking back, was all charm and no substance. My friends always teased me about my bad taste in men. One of them, Sophie, even said, "Emma, maybe it's time to stop chasing the pretty boys and find someone who actually treats you right." I guess Liam fit that description perfectly. He wasn't flashy, and he wasn't overconfident, but he had this quiet steadiness about him that made me feel like I could finally catch my breath. Over the next few weeks, I found myself looking forward to seeing him at the cafe. It wasn't anything dramatic, just small conversations about the weather or how busy the shop was. But I started noticing how thoughtful he was. How he remembered little things I mentioned. Like the fact that I hated Mondays or that I always ordered decaf after 3 p.m. One day, Liam asked me out. It wasn't anything grand, just a casual invitation to grab a coffee together after his shift. I hesitated at first, not sure if I was even attracted to him in that way. But then I thought, why not? I was tired of chasing men who only cared about appearances. Liam seemed different. He seemed like someone who actually cared. Our first date wasn't perfect, but it felt easy. We talked about everything, our favorite movies, the books we liked, our families. He wasn't trying to impress me or win me over with big gestures. He was just himself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could just be myself too. We started dating, and after about a year and a half, Liam proposed. It wasn't the kind of proposal you see in movies. No grand romantic gestures or over-the-top surprises. He took me to the park where we used to have our Sunday picnics. Pulled out a small ring box. And said, "Emma, you're my best friend. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" It was simple, understated, and perfectly Liam. So I said yes. The first year of our marriage was wonderful. Liam was everything I thought I wanted in a partner, kind, dependable, and attentive. He made me feel loved in ways I hadn't experienced before. If I had stopped to appreciate what we had back then, maybe things would have turned out differently. But life has a way of sneaking up on you. And somewhere along the way, little cracks began to form. I didn't see them for what they were at the time. They didn't feel like big, earth-shattering problems, just tiny irritations that I brushed aside. I told myself they didn't matter. But looking back now, I see how they started to chip away at the foundation of our relationship. I wish I could say I didn't see it coming. But that would be a lie. I was the one holding the hammer. Liam and I got married in a small, intimate ceremony. We didn't have a big wedding, just close family and friends. A simple venue, and vows that came straight from the heart. I remember looking at him as I said, "I do," thinking this was exactly where I was meant to be. In that moment, there was no doubt in my mind that Liam was the one. He wasn't perfect, but who is? He was kind, dependable, and cared about me in a way I hadn't experienced before. The first year of our marriage was great. Liam worked hard to expand his small business. And even though he was busier than ever, he always made time for me. He'd bring home my favorite snacks, leave little notes around the house to make me smile, and make sure we had a date night at least once a week. It wasn't extravagant or flashy, but it was real. For a while, I felt like I had everything I ever wanted. I had someone who loved me unconditionally, someone who made me laugh, and someone who made me feel safe. But somewhere along the way, that started to change. I can't pinpoint exactly when it happened, but little things began to bother me. At first, it was stuff I didn't even notice, like how Liam always wore the same few shirts that didn't quite fit right or how he never seemed interested in working out. I'd glance at old photos of us and think, has he always looked like this? It wasn't fair. I know that now, but at the time, it felt like those small annoyances started piling up in my mind. And then there was social media. I'd scroll through Instagram, looking at photos of couples who seemed so perfect, smiling at the gym, posing on vacations, or just looking effortlessly happy. I started comparing our life to theirs, wondering why we didn't have that spark. I'd think about how Liam wasn't the type to post romantic captions or take candid photos with me. He wasn't flashy, and I convinced myself that was a problem. The cracks grew wider during brunches with my friends. Sophie, my closest friend, was always so blunt, for better or worse. One afternoon, while we were all sipping mimosas, Sophie turned to me and said, "Emma, you're gorgeous. You could have anyone. Don't you ever wonder if you settled with Liam?" I laughed it off at the time, but her words stuck with me. Settled. That word echoed in my mind for weeks. I started overthinking everything. Was I settling? Could I have had more if I'd waited? I hated that the thought even crossed my mind. But once it was there, I couldn't shake it. I tried to push those thoughts aside, to remind myself of why I married Liam in the first place. But instead of focusing on the good, I let the bad overshadow it. I began to notice everything Liam wasn't instead of appreciating everything he was. When he came home tired from work and plopped down on the couch, I'd think, why doesn't he take care of himself more? If he went back for seconds at dinner, I'd joke, guess we're not watching calories tonight. Huh? They were small comments, little digs I thought were harmless at the time. But now I realize how much they must have hurt. Liam, being the patient man he is, didn't snap or argue. Instead, he started asking me if everything was okay. "You've been quiet lately," he'd say. "Is something wrong?" I'd always brush it off with an excuse. "I'm just tired." Or, "Work's been stressful." I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth because, honestly, I didn't even know what the truth was. The emotional distance between us grew slowly but surely. At first, it was just small things, like sitting on opposite ends of the couch or not sharing as much about our days. Then it became bigger, canceling date nights, ignoring his attempts to plan little surprises, and finding excuses to avoid spending time together. Liam noticed, of course. He wasn't oblivious. One night, as we were lying in bed, he turned to me and asked, "Do you still love me?" His voice was calm, but there was something vulnerable in the way he said it that broke my heart. I wanted to say, "Yes, of course I do." But the words felt heavy, like they didn't belong in my mouth. Instead, I mumbled something vague, like, "Why would you even ask that?" That night, I stayed awake long after Liam had fallen asleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering what was wrong with me. Why couldn't I just be happy with what I had? Looking back, I realized that was the beginning of the end. I was so wrapped up in my insecurities and the idea of what a perfect relationship should look like that I stopped seeing Liam for who he really was. He was still the same man I fell in love with, but I had built up this impossible standard in my head. And every time he fell short of it, I grew more frustrated. The worst part is, Liam kept trying. He'd plan little date nights or bring home flowers. But instead of appreciating the effort, I'd find excuses to brush it off. I was so caught up in comparing him to some imaginary version of a husband that I forgot to appreciate the real, flawed, and loving man right in front of me. By the time I realized how far we'd drifted apart, it felt like too much damage had already been done. I didn't know how to fix it. And worse, I wasn't sure I even wanted to. It all came to a head on a Friday night. I'd had a long week at work and was already in a terrible mood by the time I got home. Liam had texted earlier, saying he'd picked up my favorite takeout and was looking forward to having dinner together. Normally, that would have been enough to make me feel cared for. But instead, I felt irritated. I didn't want to sit through another quiet dinner pretending everything was fine. As I walked in the door, the smell of takeout filled the house. Liam greeted me with his usual warm smile, but I barely acknowledged him. "Rough day?" he asked, his tone light and caring. "Yeah," I replied shortly, heading straight to the bedroom to change. When I came back out, Liam had already set the table. He'd even lit a candle, something he used to do often when we first got married. I knew he was trying, and I wanted to appreciate it. But instead, all I felt was this gnawing frustration I couldn't explain. We sat down to eat, and the silence between us was deafening. Liam tried to make small talk, asking about my day, but I gave him short, one-word answers. Eventually, he gave up, and we ate in silence. After dinner, Liam suggested we watch a movie together, something light and funny to lift the mood. I sighed and said, "I'm tired, maybe another time," before heading to the bedroom and shutting the door. That night, as I lay in bed scrolling through my phone, I felt a pang of guilt. Liam was trying so hard to make things work, and I was pushing him away. But instead of facing the truth, I buried my feelings deeper. A few days later, my friends and I planned a girls' night out. Sophie had suggested we hit up a trendy bar downtown, and I jumped at the chance to escape the suffocating tension at home. I told Liam about it, and as usual, he didn't protest. "Have fun," he said, his tone neutral. The bar was packed when we arrived, and the energy was infectious. The drinks started flowing, and for the first time in weeks, I felt free. Sophie and the others were laughing, dancing, and talking about everything under the sun. It felt good to be around people who weren't asking questions about why I seemed distant or whether I was okay. But as the night wore on, the drinks kept coming, and my inhibitions began to fade. I found myself complaining about Liam to Sophie. "I just feel like, I don't know," I said, swirling my drink. "Like maybe I settled. He's a good guy, but sometimes I wonder if that's enough." Sophie gave me a knowing look and said, "Emma, you deserve to feel alive. If Liam's not giving you that, maybe it's time to figure out what will." Her words echoed in my mind as I ordered another drink. I knew she didn't mean any harm, but they fed into the doubts I'd been trying to ignore for months. It was around this time that Ryan appeared. He was standing at the bar next to me, waiting for his drink, when he struck up a conversation. "Looks like you're having a good time," he said, flashing a confident smile. I laughed, already feeling the effects of the alcohol. "Trying to," I replied. Ryan was easy to talk to, and before I knew it, we were deep in conversation. He asked about my job, laughed at my jokes, and complimented me in a way that felt both flattering and dangerous. He wasn't overly handsome, but he had this confidence that drew me in. As the night went on, the line between harmless conversation and something more began to blur. Ryan leaned in closer, his hand brushing mine, and I didn't pull away. Part of me knew I was crossing a line, but the attention felt intoxicating. At one point, Ryan suggested we step outside. "It's getting loud in here," he said, and I nodded, letting him lead the way. The cool night air hit me like a wake-up call, but it wasn't enough to stop what happened next. We stood by his car, talking and laughing, and then, without thinking, I leaned in. So did he. The kiss wasn't magical or passionate, it was clumsy and fueled by alcohol and bad decisions. But in that moment, it felt like an escape, a way to forget everything weighing me down. And then I heard the sound of a car door closing. I turned, my heart dropping, and saw Liam. He was standing by his car, just watching us. His expression wasn't angry or shocked, it was worse. It was empty, like all the life had drained out of him. Liam, I stammered, pulling away from Ryan. Liam didn't say a word. He just got into his car and drove off. Ryan looked between me and the car, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't know you were married, he said, taking a step back. I barely heard him. Just go, I muttered, my voice shaking. He didn't argue. He left, and I was alone in the parking lot, staring at the spot where Liam's car had been. I tried calling Liam on the way home, but he didn't answer. When I got to the house, his car wasn't in the driveway, and the lights were off. For the first time, the gravity of what I'd done hit me. I had broken something I couldn't fix. When I woke up the next morning, my head was pounding, and my stomach churned with a mix of regret and nausea. At first, everything felt like a bad dream, but as I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and sat up, the events of the night before came flooding back. Liam, the kiss, the look on his face before he drove away. My heart dropped into my stomach as I realized just how badly I had screwed up. I got out of bed and stumbled into the kitchen, hoping to find Liam sitting there, waiting for me like he always did. But the room was empty. His car wasn't in the driveway, and his favorite coffee mug was still in its place on the counter. Panic started to set in. I grabbed my phone and called him, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent a text, Liam, please come home so we can talk. I'm sorry, I know I messed up. No response. Hours passed, and he didn't come back. I paced the house, replaying the night in my head, trying to figure out how I let things get this far. By the time evening rolled around, I heard the sound of the front door opening. My heart raced, thinking it was Liam, but when I saw him, my stomach twisted in knots. He didn't look angry or sad, just exhausted, like he hadn't slept at all. Liam, I started, stepping toward him. He held up a hand, stopping me in my tracks. Emma, we need to talk, he said, his voice steady but distant. I nodded, my throat tightening. We sat down at the kitchen table, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Liam stared at the table, his fingers tracing the grain of the wood, and I couldn't bring myself to break the silence. Finally, he looked up at me, his eyes heavy with disappointment. Do you even realize what you've done? He asked. I'm so sorry, Liam, I said, my voice trembling. It was a mistake. I was drunk, and I wasn't thinking. Stop, he said, cutting me off. Don't blame this on the alcohol. That wasn't just a mistake. Emma, that was a choice. You chose to cross that line. You chose to kiss another man. Tears welled up in my eyes as his words cut through me like a knife. I know, I whispered. I know I messed up. But it didn't mean anything. I swear. He shook his head, letting out a bitter laugh. It didn't mean anything? Do you have any idea how much that nothing meant to me? I stood there, watching my wife kiss another man. And you're telling me it didn't mean anything? I was stupid. I sobbed, the guilt crashing over me in waves. I wasn't thinking. I was just. I don't even know why I did it. You don't know why? He asked, his voice rising for the first time. You've been pulling away from me for months. Emma, you've been cold, distant, and now this? Don't tell me you don't know why. I don't, I said, shaking my head. I don't know what's wrong with me. I've just been feeling so lost. Lost? Liam repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. Lost is forgetting where you parked your car. Emma, what you did was betray me. Betray us. I couldn't say anything. He was right. Liam let out a deep sigh, running a hand through his hair. I've been trying so hard to hold this together, he said, his voice quieter now. I've been patient. I've given you space. I've tried to be the husband you need. But no matter what I do, it's never enough for you, is it? It's not true, I said quickly. You've always been enough. I let my insecurities get the best of me. I made a mistake, Liam, but I love you. I love you so much. He looked at me for a long time, his eyes searching mine as if trying to find the truth in my words. Finally, he shook his head. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. Love isn't just a feeling. Emma, it's a choice you make every day. And last night, you chose someone else. Tears streamed down my face as his words sank in. I wanted to argue, to plead with him, but deep down, I knew he was right. I had chosen wrong, and now I was paying the price. I need some time, Liam said, standing up. I can't do this right now. Liam, please, I begged, reaching out to him. Don't walk away. Let me fix this. Tell me what I can do. He stepped back, avoiding my touch. I don't know if this can be fixed. Emma, I don't even know if I want to try. Those words hit harder than anything else he could have said. I watched as he grabbed his keys and walked out the door, leaving me alone in the house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. For the next few days, Liam stayed at a friend's house. He barely spoke to me, only coming back to grab a few things. Each time he did, the distance between us felt more permanent. I tried everything, texting, calling, even writing him a letter, but he didn't respond. The silence was deafening, and for the first time, I started to understand just how much damage I'd done. This wasn't just about the kiss or the distance I'd created over the months. It was about trust, something I'd taken for granted and shattered in a single moment. And the worst part? I had no idea how to put it back together. The next few weeks were some of the loneliest and most painful of my life. Liam didn't come home, and every time I tried to reach out to him, it felt like I was screaming into a void. He didn't answer my calls, didn't reply to my texts, and every attempt I made to explain or apologize was met with silence. For a while, I told myself that maybe he just needed time, that he'd come around eventually. But deep down, I knew I'd pushed him too far. The distance between us wasn't just physical, it was emotional. And it had been building for months. The kiss with Ryan was just the final nail in the coffin. One day, I came home from work and found a letter in the mailbox. It was from Liam's lawyer. My hands shook as I opened it, already knowing what it would say. Sure enough, it was a notice about the separation. Liam wanted to move forward with the process. And reading those words felt like a knife to the heart. I sat on the couch, staring at the letter, as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't just a fight we could work through. This wasn't something I could fix with a heartfelt apology or a grand gesture. Liam was done. The house felt so empty without him. I'd walk into the kitchen and expect to see him sitting at the table with his coffee. But the chair was always empty. His favorite jacket wasn't hanging by the door anymore. And the bed felt too big at night. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of him, of us, and it was like I was living in the ghost of our life together. I tried to distract myself. I threw myself into work, hoping that staying busy would keep my mind off the pain. But it didn't matter how many emails I answered or how many projects I finished, when I came home at the end of the day. The silence was waiting for me. I reached out to Sophie, desperate for someone to talk to. She listened as I poured my heart out. But even she couldn't sugarcoat the situation. Emma, I don't know what to say, she admitted. Liam's a good guy, and what you did, it's hard to come back from that. Maybe you just need to give him space. Space. That word felt so final, so hopeless. But Sophie was right. Liam had always been the kind of person who needed time to process his emotions. And all I could do was wait and hope that he'd be willing to talk to me someday. A month passed, and then another. The separation process moved forward. And with every piece of paperwork I signed, it felt like another piece of my heart was being ripped out. My parents tried to be supportive, but even they couldn't hide their disappointment. One afternoon, my mom sat me down and said, "Emma, you had a good man. A man who loved you and treated you right. I don't understand why you threw it all away." "I don't understand either," I admitted, tears streaming down my face. I got caught up in my own insecurities and stupid expectations. And I ruined everything." "Well," my mom said, her tone firm, "you can't change the past. All you can do now is learn from it and try to do better moving forward." Her words stayed with me. And over time, I started to reflect on where things had gone wrong. It wasn't just the kiss or the harsh words I'd said to Liam that night. It was the way I'd let my insecurities and unrealistic expectations poison our relationship. I'd spent so much time comparing Liam to other people and focusing on what he wasn't that I'd completely overlooked what he was. He was kind. He was patient. He was someone who loved me unconditionally, even when I didn't deserve it, and I'd thrown it all away because I was too focused on chasing some imaginary idea of perfection. One day, I ran into Liam at the grocery store. It had been months since I'd seen him, and the sight of him stopped me in my tracks. He looked different, lighter, somehow, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He was with someone else. She was beautiful, tall, elegant, and effortlessly confident. She laughed at something Liam said, and the way he looked at her made my heart ache. He looked happy, truly happy. I turned down another aisle before he could see me, my chest tightening as I tried to hold back tears. Seeing him like that made it clear that he'd moved on, and I had to accept that there was no going back. Over the next few months, I tried to rebuild my life. I moved into a small studio apartment, started therapy, and focused on figuring out who I was without Liam. It wasn't easy, and there were days when the regret felt like too much to bear. But little by little, I started to make peace with what had happened. I couldn't change the past, but I could take responsibility for my actions and try to learn from my mistakes. I don't know if Liam will ever forgive me, and honestly, I don't expect him to. He deserves the happiness he's found, and I hope his new relationship is everything ours couldn't be. As for me, I'm still a work in progress. I've learned the hard way that love isn't about perfection or appearances. It's about appreciating what you have and not letting your insecurities get in the way of something real. If nothing else, I hope my story serves as a warning to anyone who might be in the same place I was. Don't take the people who love you for granted. You might not get a second chance. It's been 6 months since Liam walked out of my life, and not a day goes by that I don't think about what happened. The apartment I moved into is small and lonely, but it suits me now. I don't deserve anything more grand. The walls feel bare and empty, but I suppose that's fitting too. They reflect exactly how I feel inside. Liam has moved on. I didn't expect to see it happen so quickly, but maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. He deserved better than what I gave him, and now he has it. The woman he's with now, the one I saw at the grocery store that day, is everything I'm not. She's beautiful, confident, and seems to make him genuinely happy. When I saw them together, I froze. My heart felt like it had stopped. And for a moment, all I could do was stare. Liam looked so free. The weight he used to carry around when we were together was gone. And he smiled at her in a way I hadn't seen in years. I turned away before he could notice me, ducking into another aisle and gripping the cart so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run out of the store and never look back. But I didn't. I stood there, forcing myself to take deep breaths until the panic subsided. That moment was the final nail in the coffin. The undeniable proof that Liam had moved on and I couldn't keep living in the past. I walked out of the store that day with a new sense of clarity. The truth is, I destroyed everything we had. I let my insecurities and my unrealistic expectations poison a relationship with a man who loved me unconditionally. And now, I was paying the price for it. I've spent the last few months reflecting on my mistakes. At first, I wanted to blame everything else, the pressure from my friends, the unrealistic images on social media, even Liam for not changing in the ways I thought he should. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized the blame was mine and mine alone. Liam wasn't the problem. I was. I let my own self-doubt and vanity take over. I was so focused on what I thought a perfect relationship should look like that I couldn't see the real, beautiful thing I had right in front of me. I pushed Liam away with my constant criticisms, my emotional distance, and ultimately, my betrayal. If I could go back and undo it all, I would. But life doesn't work that way. There's no rewind button, no way to fix the damage I caused. All I can do now is live with the consequences and try to be better moving forward. Therapy has helped. It's forced me to face the parts of myself I've been avoiding for years, the insecurities I tried to cover up by comparing myself and my relationship to others, the need for validation that drove me to seek attention in all the wrong places, and the fear of not being enough. My therapist told me something that's stuck with me. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning from it and moving forward with clarity and self-awareness. I've been trying to hold on to that, even on the days when it feels impossible. I've started journaling, writing down all the things I wish I could say to Liam. Most of it is just me apologizing over and over again, apologizing for not appreciating him, for letting my own insecurities get in the way, for being so blind to what I had. I'll never send those letters. He doesn't need to hear my apologies or my regrets. He's happy now, and the last thing I want to do is disrupt that. But writing them has been cathartic. A way for me to process everything I'm feeling without burdening anyone else. The hardest part has been letting go of the hope that Liam might come back. For months, I clung to the idea that maybe, just maybe, he'd see how much I've changed and give me another chance. But that's not fair to him, or to the woman he's with now. Liam deserves to be happy. And I have to accept that his happiness doesn't include me. Sophie and I have drifted apart. I think she doesn't know what to say to me anymore. The last time we talked, she told me her husband didn't want her hanging out with me because I'm a bad influence. It hurt, but I can't really blame him. I've become the cautionary tale. The example people point to when they say, "Don't let this happen to you." My parents have been supportive, though I can tell they're still disappointed. My mom said it best when she told me, "Emma, you had everything most people dream of, and you threw it away." She's right, of course. I had a man who loved me, who was kind and patient and dependable, and I let my own insecurities destroy that. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for what I did. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. But I'm trying to move forward, one day at a time. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that love isn't about perfection. It's not about having a picture-perfect relationship or meeting some unrealistic standard. It's about appreciating what you have, flaws and all, and not letting your own fears and doubts get in the way of something real. To Liam, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't change anything. But I need to say it. You deserved better than what I gave you. And I hope you found that now. You deserve to be happy. Truly happy. And I hope she treats you the way I should have. As for me, I'm still learning. Still trying to figure out who I am and who I want to be. I don't know what the future holds. But I know I'll never make the same mistakes again. If you're reading this, I hope you take something away from my story. Don't take the people who love you for granted. Don't let your insecurities ruin something real. You might not get a second chance. It's strange how life moves on, even when you feel stuck in place. It's been almost a year since Liam left. And though the pain isn't as sharp as it was in the beginning, it's still there, a dull ache that reminds me of what I lost. Sometimes, it hits me when I least expect it. Like when I see a couple holding hands at the park or when a song he loved comes on the radio. The memories rush back, bittersweet and unrelenting. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, to reflect on my choices and where everything went wrong. At first, I told myself I just made a mistake, a lapse in judgment fueled by alcohol and a bad night. But the truth is, the kiss with Ryan was just the final symptom of a much deeper problem. The real betrayal wasn't in that moment. It was in the months leading up to it. When I let resentment and insecurity take root in my heart. I compared Liam to men who didn't exist, held him to standards no one could meet, and blamed him for not being something he was never meant to be. Liam was good, solid, dependable, and kind. He wasn't flashy or overly confident, but he had a quiet strength that should have been enough. And yet, I let my own fears and vanity blind me to what I had. One of the hardest lessons I've learned is that love isn't about perfection. It's not about finding someone who checks every box on a superficial list. It's about accepting someone for who they are, flaws and all, and choosing to love them anyway. Liam did that for me. But I couldn't do the same for him. I've spent the last year trying to rebuild my life and myself. Therapy has been a lifeline. My therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Carter, has helped me uncover so many things I didn't want to face. My fear of not being enough. My need for validation. My habit of sabotaging the good things in my life. It's all been laid bare. She once asked me, "Emma, why do you think you pushed Liam away?" At first, I didn't have an answer. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I think I was scared. I admitted, scared that I didn't deserve him. Scared that he'd eventually realize I wasn't good enough and leave me. So I pushed him away first. Dr. Carter nodded, her expression soft but firm. It's not uncommon, she said, but now that you recognize it, you have the opportunity to break that cycle. Breaking the cycle has been harder than I imagined. Some days, I feel like I'm making progress, learning to accept myself, flaws and all. Other days, I feel like I'm drowning in regret. But I keep going because I know that's what Liam would want for me. I don't know much about his life now, but from what I've heard, he's happy. He and his girlfriend, the one I saw at the grocery store, are still together. They're building a life that I know I'll never be a part of. And as much as it hurts, I'm glad he found someone who appreciates him the way I should have. The last time I saw him was at a mutual friend's wedding. I wasn't expecting him to be there, but when I walked into the reception and saw him across the room, my heart stopped. He looked so different, lighter, freer, like he was finally at peace. He was with her, of course. They were sitting at a table, laughing and holding hands, and it was clear to anyone watching that they were deeply in love. I thought about going over to say hello, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. What could I possibly say? That I was sorry? That I missed him? That I wished things had turned out differently? None of it would matter. Liam had moved on, and I had to respect that. So I stayed in the shadows, watching from a distance as the man I once called my husband danced with someone else. It was bittersweet, but it was also the closure I didn't know I needed. In the months since then, I've started to find my own sense of peace. I've learned to let go of the hope that Liam might come back. And instead, I've focused on building a life that doesn't revolve around what I've lost. I've taken up yoga, started volunteering at a local shelter, and even adopted a rescue dog named Max. It's not the life I imagined, and it's certainly not the life I had with Liam, but it's mine, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm finally learning to live with the person I am. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this: I'll never take love for granted again. If I ever get the chance to love someone like Liam again, I'll hold on to them with everything I have. I'll appreciate their flaws, cherish their kindness, and never let my own insecurities get in the way. To anyone reading this, I hope my story serves as a warning. Don't let fear and doubt ruin something beautiful. Don't let the opinions of others or the pressure of society blind you to what you have. The grass isn't greener on the other side. It's green where you water it. And to Liam, if you ever come across this, thank you. Thank you for loving me when I couldn't love myself. Thank you for showing me what a good man looks like. I'm sorry I couldn't be the woman you deserved, but I hope you found her now. You deserve all the happiness in the world, and I'll always be grateful for the time we had together. Life isn't perfect, and neither am I, but I'm learning, and I hope that counts for something. Thank you so much for watching and sticking with me until the end. If you found this story meaningful or relatable, please give this video a thumbs up, it really helps. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I've got more stories, reflections, and lessons coming your way, and I'd love for you to be a part of this journey. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.